Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are focusing our attention on the introduction of Terence Hughes' forthcoming book, The Invisible Epidemic, Movement, Intelligence, and Circulation.
Yeah, and Hughes brings this really remarkable history to the topic.
Absolutely. I mean, 45 years working across the entire movement spectrum, from elite athletes right down to the general public.
And get this, the man is 75 years old, still teaches movement, cycles 150 miles a week.
And runs an indie record label. It's quite the background.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it gives him this unique kind of time-lapse perspective on what exactly went wrong with, human health over the last 50 years or so.
So what's crucial to understand then is the scope of his observation.
Well, yeah, Hughes literally watched the birth of the commercial fitness industry happen at the same time as this catastrophic rise in obesity, the diabetes crisis, the explosion of circulatory diseases.
Okay.
And he links this collapse directly to the information age and what he calls the loss of movement intelligence.
Movement intelligence. So that's like basic biological literacy.
Yeah.
Knowing how your own body works.
Exactly. The foundational craft of self-managing the human body. He sees this systematic breakdown in just basic human capacity.
Okay, so let's establish our mission here for you, the listener. We really need to unpack this source material and accurately define what Hughes means by this invisible epidemic.
Right.
He frames the whole crisis using three foundational principles. Not just questions, really, but more like diagnostic tools. Who taught you to move? When did the learning stop? How connected and able do you feel in your own body?
Those are powerful questions.
They are. And the answers, he argues, point to this massive crisis affecting billions, which, well, we've been fundamentally misinterpreting.
And the central premise is, look, it's almost unbelievably simple when you hear it.
Right.
The largest health crisis in human history is invisible, precisely because the core skills of maintaining our bodies, things like intelligent movement, optimizing circulation, preventing predictable injuries, they were never actually taught as part of formal education.
We teach math, history, science.
But not basic biological self-management. We just skip it. And this creates what Hughes calls the great education gap.
And because of that gap, people are kind of left scrabbling, trying to piece together health knowledge from all these fragmented, often contradictory sources.
That is the critical failure point he hammers home. I mean, just think about those sources for a second.
Okay.
You've got the fitness industry. What does it often do? It sells complexity, fancy equipment, obscuring simple, timeless truths about movement.
Yeah, the latest gadget, the newest class.
Then you have healthcare systems. By design, they focus almost entirely on treating symptoms, usually after severe dysfunction has already developed.
Reactive, not proactive.
Exactly. Then sports programs, they typically prioritize, acute, high-level performance metrics, often at the expense of developing that long-term foundational intelligence.
Like winning the game now versus lifelong joint health later.
Precisely. And then, of course, social media, which is just the ultimate amplifier of fleeting trends over basic proven physiological principles. You see it everywhere.
So the end result is,
Yeah.
well, we have this globally functional population, right? People are experts in tech, finance, whatever.
Yeah, highly skilled.
But they remain fundamentally functionally illiterate when it comes to their own back health or weight regulation or just how their body truly manages flow and movement.
And the consequence of that specific educational failure, it's staggering on a global scale. Hughes introduces this really uncomfortable reality that effectively everyone is in rehabilitation every day.
Wow, okay. That sounds intense. Everyone.
It's not about saying everyone is sick right now. It's about the trajectory. It's not an isolated issue of the sick or the elderly. He argues it's the systematic outcome of this educational void. It forces the entire population into a state of perpetual maintenance or recovery, but without the necessary tools to actually manage themselves.
I have to ask, though, are we really putting, say, a healthy, active 35-year-old in the same category as someone recovering post-surgery? How does that work?
It's not about the immediate pathology. It's about normalization. Hughes points out that the healthy 35-year-old is likely already normalizing things like chronic stiffness, minor aches, limited ranges of motion.
Things we just brush off as getting older.
Exactly. These predictable micro-deteriorations that we accept as normal aging. But he's saying they're not inevitable. They're the result of this missing education. And if we quantify this, well, the statistics show this trajectory is a global structural crisis, not just individual bad luck or failure.
Okay, let's look at those numbers then, because they really do demand a moment of reflection. If we just start with the joint and injury scale, globally, 619 million people suffer from back pain.
619 million. That makes it the single leading cause of disability worldwide.
Astounding. And me osteoarthritis.
That affects 365 million people, again, globally.
And that's just joints. What about the metabolic side?
Yeah, now switch gears to the metabolic scale, and honestly, the picture doesn't get any better. Type 2 diabetes affects 537 million adults globally.
537 million.
And that figure is projected to approach 800 million within the next 20 years. And on top of that, over 650 million adults are classified as obese.
So we're talking well over 1 billion people just with those conditions.
Easily. Suffering from predictable, largely movement-related conditions.
And it really speaks to a fundamental system failure, doesn't it? The sources highlight that healthcare systems spend these astronomical sums on acute, high-level interventions.
Yeah, like the million-plus joint replacements done every year just in the U.S.
Right. Huge interventions. But then minimal to zero foundational education for long-term self-management after the procedure.
Exactly. That's the crazy part. Patients get intense professional support for maybe a few weeks. They get a new hip or a new knee, and then they're functionally abandoned.
Left on their own.
They're expected to somehow maintain on their own, despite having the exact same missing movement intelligence that likely contributed to the initial problem. It leads straight to what Hughes calls a predictable decline.
You can see it everywhere too, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. The systemic degradation of basic human movement is visible everywhere. You see children who literally cannot skip or hop rhythmically, teenagers with shuffling gaits, office workers struggling with simple level changes like getting up off the floor. We've just collectively normalized this degradation across all populations.
Okay, this feels like the pivot point in the argument. Why do these movement deficits lead to such widespread and seemingly unrelated health crises? Like, how does poor movement connect chronic back pain and type 2 diabetes? That feels like a leap.
It does seem like a leap initially, but this is what Hughes calls the hidden connection. He argues they are linked fundamentally by the collapse of one common denominator.
Which is?
The invisible epidemic isn't just about losing muscle strength or cardio fitness in the way we usually think about it. It is the systematic destruction of movement intelligence, which then fundamentally compromises the body's entire circulation network.
Circulation, okay.
Think about it. The fitness industry, for decades, has been almost obsessed with optimizing cardiac output, right?
Yeah.
Heart rate zones, VO2 max.
Sure, that's the standard metric.
But that focus has completely obscured a much deeper truth. Circulation depends just as much, maybe even more, on varied intelligent movement as it does on the heart itself.
Okay, this next point you mentioned is what Hughes calls the aha moment, the bit that reframes how we think about the heart. What are these non-cardiac aspects of circulation, the ones that depend entirely on us moving properly?
Right, this is key. There are, he outlines, 4 essential non-cardiac circulatory functions that are totally movement dependent.
Okay, number 1.
First, joint articulation. Varied, rhythmic movement through a joint's full range acts like a pump for synovial fluid. That fluid is the only way nutrients get delivered to your cartilage. So if you don't move the joint intelligently, the cartilage effectively starves.
No movement, no nourishment for the joint lining. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Second, peripheral muscle pumping. Every major muscle group in your body basically serves as an auxiliary heart. As muscles contract and release rhythmically, they squeeze the veins and lymphatic vessels, assisting blood return back to the heart and pushing lymphatic fluid along. It combats gravity, pushes waste out.
So stillness shuts down hundreds of little pumps.
Essentially, yes. This vital function just shuts down during prolonged stillness or repetitive, non-varied movement.
Yeah. Okay, third.
Third area is fascial mobilization, that web of connective tissue throughout your body. Varied movement keeps that fascial web pliable, hydrated, and elastic. This is absolutely vital for maintaining flow in the lymphatic drainage system and for effective waste removal throughout all your tissues. Stiffness isn't just tight muscles, it's congested fascia.
Okay, and the fourth.
Finally, number 4 is cross-lateral integration. Think about movements where opposite sides of the body work together, walking, skipping, crawling, swimming. These patterns actually optimize whole brain circulation and help balance blood flow between the 2 hemispheres of the body. It's a systemic necessity we often lose.
Okay, that's a really different way of looking at circulation, not just the heart.
Totally different. It's systemic.
So let's connect this back to the metabolic crisis, the diabetes, the obesity. How does poor circulation, in this sense, lead to those conditions? It suddenly makes more sense now.
It does, doesn't it?
If the body's internal plumbing system, these non-cardiac pumps, are failing because we lack foundational movement variety, you're saying the body just struggles to process and use nutrients effectively. That sounds like the assimilation intelligence crisis you mentioned, but in plain English.
That is exactly the mechanism Hughes describes. Movement poverty. The lack of varied, intelligent movement creates an inability to effectively transport, utilize, and assimilate nutrients at the cellular level.
So diet isn't the whole picture.
Not even close. You could have the quote-unquote perfect diet, but if your circulation is fundamentally compromised at the tissue level because you're not moving intelligently, your cells simply cannot efficiently take up or use that energy. This leads directly to things like insulin resistance, metabolic dysfunction, obesity, often regardless of simple caloric input.
That connects the dots. That loss of simple foundational movement leads potentially to major systemic failure down the line.
Precisely. It's a powerful link.
Okay, let's zoom back out then maybe towards the solution side. What exactly is this lost basic literacy? What's the foundational deficit that prevents people from self-managing their bodies effectively, no matter how many hours they might spend on, say, a cardio machine?
Well, what's fascinating here, according to Hughes, is that the deficit isn't really defined by movement quantity like steps per day or hours in the gym. It's defined by movement quality and awareness.
Quality over quantity.
Yes. Most people, even fit people, lack the ability to consciously, slowly move each major joint through its full individual range of motion. They simply can't do it or haven't ever tried.
And they lack proprioceptive awareness. What's that again?
Proprioceptive awareness. It's the ability to feel subtle distinctions in your joint position, muscle tension, the state of your tissues. It's your internal body sense. Most people's is quite underdeveloped.
Okay.
They also often can't coordinate their breath naturally with movement, which leads to unnecessary tension and nervous system dysregulation. And crucially, as we touched on, many have lost the ability to move backward, laterally, or rotationally with confidence and control.
Which eliminates, was it 75% of our movement vocabulary?
Yeah, about 3/4 of our natural multi-directional movement vocabulary. We become very linear, very forward dominated.
Okay, eliminating 3/4 of your natural movement potential. That's a massive deficit. But the solution, Hughes argues, follows something called the simplexity principle.
That's right, simplexity.
It sounds like it's not about adding more complex routines on top of the existing dysfunction, but something else.
Exactly. It's about restoring the absolute simplest foundation first. Simplexity is the idea that profound results come from mastering the basics.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, think about it. For the vast majority of the population who currently do virtually no conscious, slow joint articulation, meaning zero specific attention paid to moving each joint through its range, teaching them the simple foundation of moving every single joint slowly and rhythmically. That represents potentially a 100% or more increase in specific joint health and capacity restoration for that joint.
So if you haven't been consciously moving your hip that way for years...
And you start introducing mindful, full-range articulation, you're bringing synovial fluid circulation back to cartilage that hasn't received it effectively in maybe a decade. That's not a marginal gain, right?
No, that sounds pretty fundamental.
It's potentially an exponential restoration of function, starting from the simplest possible input.
That principle, that simple conscious articulation, can yield such profound, attainable results that actually feels incredibly motivating.
It is.
It anchors this idea that recovery doesn't necessarily require some radical, overwhelming change in lifestyle, but maybe just a radical change in attention to the basics.
And that foundational clarity, that understanding of simplexity is really necessary before we can effectively delve into the complexities of modern health misinformation. Remember, this is just the introduction we're unpacking today. It's the roadmap for understanding how to rebuild that lost movement intelligence.
Right. And to give you, the listener, a taste of where this deep dive is going to be heading as we continue through Hughes's source material, his subsequent chapter titles really promise to challenge decades of health dogma.
Yeah, they look provocative.
We're going to be exploring titles like The Heart Rate Mythology, exposing 50 years of misguided health advice, The Great Medical Weight Loss Muscle Wasting Epidemic.
Oof, that one sounds intense.
Also, The Missing Element, Why Circulation Trumps Every Fitness Craze, The Cross-Lateral Crisis, and finally, Why Fitness Isn't Health.
Just reading those themes, you can see we're going to be prioritizing this idea of movement intelligence and systemic circulation over a lot of the fragmented and often, frankly, misleading approaches like simple calorie counting or chasing arbitrary fitness metrics that completely fail to address these underlying physiological deficits.
So wrapping up this first look, what does this all mean for you listening? I think the core takeaway from Hughes' introduction is pretty clear. The invisible epidemic, this widespread biological illiteracy, is fundamentally an educational failure.
Yeah.
We simply weren't taught the basic craft of being human in our own bodies. And he argues the entire modern health crisis stems, in large part, from that void.
But the solution, the starting point at least, begins with recognition. Recognizing the gap, and then engaging in the simple, conscious restoration of basic movement intelligence.
Okay, and maybe a final thought for you to consider. Something pulled directly from the source material.
Yeah, this is quite hopeful, actually. Hughes points out that for the first time in human history, we might actually have the technological capacity, things like AI-powered movement assessment, personalized digital education platforms to deliver this foundational movement intelligence at a truly planetary scale.
Wow.
This knowledge, which arguably should have been taught in schools decades ago, can now potentially reach the estimated 2.4 billion physically inactive adults globally. It could genuinely start to turn the tide on this invisible crisis.
So the revolution starts simply by choosing to see what was previously overlooked.
Exactly, just by paying attention differently.